Well, how we doing tonight? IB Nation Sports Talk is up and running along with the one, the only Vince D'Addario, back from a night of soccer last night.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
Sean Stiers. How are you?
Fantastic. It was one of the most boring games I've ever watched, so that was awesome. And but it wasn't as cold as I thought it was going to be, so that's a bonus. So
that is a bonus. That is a bonus. You look a little better now than you did last night when I was talking to you. So.
I feel 1,000 times better than I was yesterday. So, things are good. Kept the spectacles on. I'm going to go a couple days without the contacts. I think that's probably a smart way to go at this point. But other than that, ready to rock and roll. So
awesome.
Excited about. We actually have breaking news to talk about, which is different.
I tell you. I tell you what.
Was not expecting that.
I know. I don't know that too many people were expecting it, to be quite honest.
I mean, yeah.
I'm having some electronic technological difficulty here, and I just realized that I've got some audio that I'm going to need to drop in here in a minute too. But I tell you what, can you kind of vamp for about 2 minutes? I need to run and grab something real quick. Okay?
I got you. Yeah.
This is a little awkward, but
it's okay.
I trust you.
You want me to talk about the breaking news? You want me to go that route? Or what do you want me to say, brother? I'll go wherever.
I tell you what. Let me do this. Because I've heard the soundbite already. I doubt that you have. So
I have not. No.
Let me see. I'll go ahead and get it queued up.
Okay.
Jared, well, a couple of different things.
Okay.
Jared Lloyd, who covers BYU for the Daily Herald in Provo, is going to join us later in the show after Rapid Fire. So we've got that coming up in a little bit. But we do have the Jacob Lacey news today. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that first. Like I said, let me go ahead and play this soundbite of Marcus Freeman talking about it earlier today. Marcus Freeman was asked about it, and his first answer was relatively brief. And so I kind of combined it with the second when he was asked, okay, so what happens in terms of, who's going to kind of fill that void, and, could other guys see playing time increased and stuff like that. So it's kind of doubled up here. It'll go back to back, and I'll hit you with that right now.
Part of the team. He'll look to transfer probably at the end of the season after the semester's over. I think you'll see Chris Smith playing a little bit more, who again, it's just a position that's extremely deep. And the defensive tackle position right now is one of the deepest positions we have on our team. And so Chris Smith will play a little bit more, but you'll see a guy like Gabe Rubio playing more. Jason Anye will now probably move from scout team. He's moved from scout team to, getting reps with the defense. And so, again, Lacey was a great player. Lacey did a lot of great things for us, but it's a deep position. And he made a decision that ultimately he felt was best for him, and we respect it. We love Jacob. And, the best thing about it is he leaves here with a degree in his hand. And that's what I want for these young men, is that if you decide to leave in hopes of going somewhere and playing more, don't waste this opportunity to earn a degree from this university. And so he did that. But, again, you'll see Chris Smith play more. You'll see Gabe Rubio for sure. Both of those two play a lot more.
Played that, managed to get back in the room after hopefully getting my little glitch taken care of. So Vince, there's Marcus Freeman. You heard him talk about it. I think this caught a lot of people off guard today. I know there were a couple people kind of, who sniffed this out, and obviously the question was asked at the press conference, but I think in general, a lot of people are really surprised by this. So I'll start with your reaction.
I was shocked, frankly. I got a text that this was occurring and that he was planning on transferring at the end of the year, obviously based on what Marcus Freeman said. And I'm speculating, as far as anything goes here, I don't have any inside information, but it felt like this was a decision that was made fairly recently. This wasn't something that, to my knowledge, was, broke earlier, by the media, or that the media had any idea that it was going to happen. Maybe some people had an inkling that it was going to take place, but this is the opportunity. This is the time for these things to take place before Game 5 goes on, because Jacob Lacey played in 4 games. He can use this as his redshirt year. And so he basically gets this year all over again. And he has 2 years of eligibility remaining because he's played for 4 years. But you got the COVID year, and now he can redshirt. And this was his 4th year, which is why he's a senior. This is why he has a degree, which is fantastic. You know, I give him credit for that. He's going to walk out of here with a degree from Notre Dame, which is awesome. But yeah, I mean, this was the time to make this decision, if that's the decision that he wants to make, because of the 4-game situation. So it is going to be, I was surprised because of what he was able to do up to this point. But then when you break it down, and I read Brian's article on irishbreakdown.com, you know, his snaps have gone down every game. And there's obviously a reason for that. But Marcus Freeman is 100% accurate that this is a very deep position. So there's obviously going to be some guys that are going to have an opportunity to play that did not have an opportunity to play before. Jason Onye is one of those guys. He moves from the scout team to the varsity. And so he's going to get an opportunity to play potentially. But Gabe Rubio, who we all like and we all think can be a really good player, is going to get a great opportunity this year. So it opens up an opportunity for other guys. I really liked what Jacob Lacey brought to the table. It surprises me that he's leaving, but if that's what he wants to do, that's what he feels is best for him, you know, then so be it.
Yeah, and that's, you know, you bring up Rubio, and when you look at the snap counts and kind of the way the snap counts have gone, like if you look specifically, he played 29 snaps in the season opener against Ohio State, and that goes to 24 against Cal. So still relatively high in those 2 games, but then it drops all the way down to 11 snaps. Well, I guess now those games were flipped around. I kind of had them out of order, you know, when I wrote them down. But so it did go 29 against Ohio State, 11 against Marshall, then it rises to 24 against Cal, and then it falls to 9 snaps against North Carolina. And like you mentioned Gabe Rubio, and he's someone who we've started to see more of the last couple games. And you kind of wonder, with the snap counts going where it is, you know, like, one, is it an opponent to opponent type thing? You know, is that kind of how they were looking at it? Or is it just simply a matter of, is Gabe Rubio starting to play better? And are they, from what they're seeing in practice and in games, do they feel like they're getting more out of Gabe Rubio than they were from Jacob Lacey, despite the fact that he had that awesome game against Cal, you know, with a couple of sacks and 5 tackles. And, you know, again, like when you look at all the snap counts, that's the only game, regardless of how much he played against Ohio State, you know, that's the only game where he's got even a tackle this season, was that one game where he had the monster game against Cal.
Yeah, and it was great to see him have that monster game, and we all kind of were excited about where he could go and all of that. And, you know, I hate when players leave in the middle of the season, you know, and if that is what their family thought was the best thing for them, then I guess that this is the time to do it. So again, you preserve this year's eligibility, but the writing, like you said, it must have been on the wall. I mean, that Gabe Rubio was going to be taking some of those snaps. And if that was going to be the case, I'm sure he went and talked to his position coach. I'm sure he talked to Marcus Freeman, like, hey, is this how this is going to go? You know, is this what the rest of the season is going to look like? You know, what does that look like for me? And he probably didn't get the answers that he was looking for. I mean, I know Brian's reaching out to the family and things like that, and so maybe he'll have a little bit more information, you know, than we have currently. But it really just feels like a playing time situation.
Well,
and it's tough. That's tough.
Yeah,
I get
the
it.
other thing, you know, like, speaking of Rubio, it was Howard Cross at the top of the depth chart once again, as he has been all season. And Rubio, coming into the week, was listed as the number 2 defensive tackle. So again, you're talking about a senior who probably, you know, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but probably feels like, hey, I've put in my time.
Sure.
And kind of the way this program, you know, has run, it's like, I put in my time. I'm a senior. I showed against Cal that I can do something. You know, I showed that I'm a pretty good defensive tackle myself. And now all of a sudden a couple of games later,
Sure.
boom, Gabe Rubio is listed as the number 2 defensive tackle. So it's it's got to be tough for him, I'm sure. And
I get that.
Feels yeah.
and
feels like,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I'm sure one of the things that he wanted to get accomplished while he was at Notre Dame is to get a degree. Check. Like he got that
done.
Yeah. And once you get your degree, if you're looking for a place to have more playing time, then you know what? God bless you. Go wherever you need to get playing time. I don't really have an issue with that. I mean, the number one goal, and maybe this is more like a dad talking, but the number one goal is to get your degree. And if football is an avenue to get your degree, then so be it. Now, go chase that playing time. And I have no problem with that. If that is why he's leaving and playing time was going to be numbered for him moving forward, and he felt like this was an opportunity for him to get more playing time at maybe a smaller school or whatever, then you know what? Go for it. Thanks for what you put into the program.
Yeah.
And, I hope you have all the luck in the world, except if you ever play Notre Dame, that kind of a thing.
And just from what I've heard in the last couple of minutes, there is some confirmation that it basically just boils down to playing time. And that's what it's all about. And, I know there were some people kind of scratching their heads at the timing of this because you're already into the season and all that. But by making this decision now, he's only played 4 games. You can play 4 games and preserve your red shirt. So by doing this now, it sucks that he's walking away from his team, especially in his senior year. Now, the silver lining being what you already said, he does have his degree, or he will have his degree when he leaves here at the semester for sure anyway. But he'll walk out of Notre Dame with a degree. And because of the COVID year and the fact that he's also preserving this year of eligibility by only playing in 4 games, that means he'll have 2 seasons of eligibility when he winds up wherever he ends up down the road. So
yeah, right. And we have confirmation that it was pretty much about playing time, which again, I understand it, I get it, and he wasn't getting the answers that he wanted when it comes to playing time, and so he wanted to leave, and he wanted to leave with 2 years left, and I get that because it's very hard to make a mark, go into a program and only having 1 year. Having 2 years is an opportunity for him to really make a mark someplace. And so wherever that happens to be, then great.
Yeah. Just like Brian is saying in the chat here, he got his degree, wants to play to showcase his talent to the NFL. And that's, all these guys want to play in the NFL, or a vast majority of them.
Sure.
And by having 2 years remaining to be a full-time starter wherever it happens to be, we all know that you don't have to go through Notre Dame's and Alabama's and Clemson to get to the NFL. There are plenty of guys, who aren't playing it at those kind of schools who star in the NFL. All you've got to do is have the opportunity to go out, be a full-time starter, and show what you can do. And by having 2 years left, as opposed to just 1, being a part-time player at Notre Dame and then going someplace for a full year, it's a big difference.
Absolutely. And that's again, he's going to have 2 years, so that's fantastic for him. And it's awkward leaving after 4 games. I get that, but there are a ton of guys that were in a Notre Dame uniform at one point that are now playing for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's just the way that it goes, especially with the new transfer rule. He can leave right away, be eligible next August, and be ready to roll. And he doesn't have to sit out. And basically this year never happened. This year never happened for him.
Right.
And so he gets to, and then he gets the COVID year. So, again, he got his degree from Notre Dame. That's got to be priority number 1. At least it would be if I was his parents. And now he gets to go, like Brian J. Irish said, showcase his talents for the NFL. And you can do that pretty much playing for any school.
Yeah.
With technology the way it is right now, there's film for everybody everywhere. Doesn't matter where he goes. If he shows the talent, if he flashes the talent, then he'll get his opportunity.
Well, and he's got some good film from that Cal game.
Absolutely. No doubt. Absolutely correct.
Maybe he goes out to Cal and plays for a couple years at Cal. They know what he can do.
Yeah. So. Well, there's a solid point. And you know what? They got a pretty decent defense, so he'd fit in all right over there.
Yeah. So, good luck to him. Again, it stinks, but again, the upside is there is a lot of depth there, and that's part of what is causing this, decision for him. And then you've also got, and I kind of went back and watched some of the North Carolina stuff. It was like, Riley Mills has played inside and outside. He's playing more over, on the other defensive tackle side, not the
Right, the
nose
three
guard
technique.
side. Yeah, the 3 technique more, whereas you had like Mills and Howard Cross in there
Right.
at the same time, for example. So you've still got that nose, but you also still have Rubio, and as Marcus Freeman said, you've still got Chris Smith and now Jason Anye moving from the scout team
Right.
up, to the regular team this week because of this as well.
Yep, absolutely. So again, it's going to give other guys an opportunity to kind of do their thing, which I think is great. I mean, and somebody mentioned it, Salty Virginia Peanuts, and I don't know if you put this up here while we were talking, but he says if Freeman elevates recruiting across the board, many upperclassmen will be displaced by underclassmen soon. ND needs a plan.
Could happen.
Lacey looks pretty good, degree plus a red shirt. So he's absolutely right. I mean, on both of those counts, the recruiting has been up across the board. And if that's the case, and you want to get young guys on the field, that's what's going to happen. And you're right. Lacey does look good to other schools because he has his degree already. So you don't have to worry about transfer credits and all that other stuff. That doesn't even matter. And so he's just going to be able to come in right away and help your team.
I mean, he can basically come in and take a couple survey classes and not even have to worry about class for the next 2 years.
Underwater basket weaving, ballroom dancing, so he'll fit in great at USC if he goes over there.
That's exactly right. I mean, you laugh, but you joke, but who knows?
Wasn't that what Matt Leinart was taking? Wasn't he taking ballroom dancing and some other stuff?
Was. Yeah, he was. But but you make a good point as well about the fact that you can pack up and go play right away.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit for a year either. So it just makes this kind of decision that much easier.
Right. And that's the system that we're operating under now. You know what I mean? And you think you start the season, you're good to go with your roster, and then middle of the season, bye-bye, not getting enough playing time. So, I mean, you constantly have to be aware now of guys leaving and keeping everybody happy and, all lovey-dovey kumbaya. Everybody's happy. Everybody's getting playing time. And sometimes that's not possible to do. And then things like this happen. So,
but I also think that the important thing to remember is, because when transfers happen, fans and media, we're pretty much focused on, the team we're a fan of or the team we cover.
Sure.
But this stuff is going on everywhere. Everyone's
absolutely.
dealing with this kind of stuff. Now, it might not all be, a month into the season, but, I mean, think about Clemson and Kelly Bryant a few years back when he was displaced by Trevor Lawrence. Exact same thing happened there where, he had his eligibility still. Trevor Lawrence took over when Trevor was a freshman. And Bryant, left mid-season so that he maintained his eligibility and he could go play someplace else and have that full year still.
Yeah. Did he go to Missouri? Is that what's sticking out in my head?
I can't remember. It seemed like a smaller school for some reason.
I couldn't remember where he went, but regardless, it was the same exact situation. He preserved his red shirt because it was less than four games, right? And there it is. So it's I mean, look, good luck to him. I hope he does really well. I just hope he doesn't do well if he ever has to play Notre Dame. If people are saying he can go to USC because their depth is paper thin, not wrong about that. Their depth is paper thin, but I get nervous when people go to places that play Notre Dame. You never want to see that. But hey, I was right.
Well, we have some disagreement. Tyler's saying there, and Brandon's saying Arkansas. Mizzou sounds more familiar than I think it was Missouri as well. I think you're right about that. But you really didn't hear that much.
No, you didn't
though either.
No, haven't heard much from Missouri, period. But
Again, we've got a lot in this show today.
Yeah, we do.
With the BYU reporter coming up. But I wanted to ask you before we start rapid fire, as Notre Dame comes out of this bye week now with Jacob Lacey now gone and him not necessarily factoring into this, but 2-2 bye week. BYU, of course, Shamrock Series this weekend. Who most needs to raise their game now for the Irish as we get set for this, what's going to be a stretch drive of 8 consecutive weeks of football for Notre Dame?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think there's multiple answers to this question. Obviously, I want to see Drew Pine, raise his game. I think that there's more that the offense can accomplish with him behind center, but he needs to play better, and he needs to he and Tommy Rees need to be together on this, and they need to slowly open the playbook and continue to advance the offense.
Right.
And look, he's doing a great job with what he's being asked to do. Tommy needs to ask more of him, right? And when that happens, Drew needs to meet the challenge. And so he needs to play better, right? He needs to meet that challenge. So that would be the first one that I could think of. And I would say the linebacking core as a whole needs to raise their game. I think the secondary is playing pretty darn good football. I think the front is playing pretty darn good football. They need that second level to really step up their game. And if that means playing some different guys, then so be it, right? I think, they're basically down to 2 linebacking spots. The third one's kind of been taking out a little bit, right? And so somebody needs to step up so that linebacking core can make that defense go from pretty darn good to really good / elite.
Yeah.
And their linebacking core away from that. And I think they've got the talent on the roster, but they need to get there. So I'll say Drew Pine, I'll say linebacking core, and I'll also say Tommy Rees. I think he needs to step up as well. So that's where I'm at.
I would agree. And it's funny because, Tommy spoke with the media after practice the other day, and we posted the notebook with some of his comments where, of course, he's talking about.
By the way,
I was going to say, I think a lot of people read that because when Tobias Merriweather is in the headline, newsflash, people click.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And people were not very excited about some of the comments that Tommy Rees had about Tobias Merriweather. And I can't say as I blame him, because we're still waiting for that. And like, I don't know how many different directions we can go with that, but if that guy's not going to be on the field, then you're right. Tommy has got to compensate for it someplace. And we definitely need to see a continued evolution from him as well as the other receivers as well, because as Ed 3 says, it's all about getting the passing game working. And I agree with that. And I think to an extent, it's also, I'm not saying you're going to overlook any opponent, but every opponent from now up until November 5th, I think that's what it is, right? Clemson, November 5th.
Yeah, it's for early November,
It's like this every game is an opportunity to get better. You're not going to beat Clemson with the receiving core that you've got right now, not playing the way that they're playing anyway. So if you have opportunities to get Tobias Merriweather on the field and get him some experience and see, if you can make him a factor to some extent in the passing game, I think you've got to look for those opportunities to do that. But we haven't necessarily seen that be the approach so far.
And it was funny because in your article that I read, Tommy Rees talked about the fact they had things in the playbook that are targeted for Tobias, but they, with the game flow, they never got into it. The game flow. What are you talking about? You completely dominated the North Carolina game. You pretty much dominated the majority of the Cal game. Let's say we can even say second half. So in 6 quarters, you couldn't figure out how to get the little package or whatever that you had for Tobias into the mix. Like, I don't know. That seemed like
if Carolina doesn't hit, that last big pass play.
That's true.
Like, do we see some of those guys? Does he see the field? Who knows? It didn't happen, but because it ended up being close. But I completely agree. To me, it's all about, we're seeing good strides in terms of the offensive line. Drew Pine has at least played solid. There's definitely another level for him to go to, though.
Absolutely.
But this receiving game, specifically downfield, has got to find another gear because you can't just sit on all the short stuff if you're going to beat Clemson and or USC.
Because they have good enough defense to, make you pay for that, essentially, right? They have a good enough defense to make you pay. So you've got to be more multiple, with your offense. You have to be. And, a lot of the stuff that they were doing offensively was extensions of the run game because it was just making it wider and getting the ball outside. It was extensions of the run game. They just need to do a better job, and they're going to need to push the ball down the field. And how we have been saying that for so long, and I realize we got to get to the next thing, but man, how about the semifinal game against Clemson, right?
Yeah.
Clemson just loaded the box because they're like, go ahead, throw deep on us. And they couldn't do it or or wouldn't. One of the two couldn't do it. And, that was a lot closer game than people think that it was because, when Love went out, et cetera, we can talk about that a million times. but the defense was playing well. I mean, they had Trevor Lawrence on his heels, but he made big plays when it counted, right? The offense couldn't move the ball. They could not move the ball because they refused to throw the ball down the field. They just tried to run the ball just right into the teeth of that defense.
Yep.
And it was like banging your head against the wall,
Same
right?
result. Same result.
So,
That's right.
you know, you're going to get that exact same result if that's what you do. Now, Clemson's offense is not the offense from 2019. You know, there's other mitigating factors, but the defense is still pretty darn good. And you can't just go in there banging your head against the wall against a team like Clemson. So you've got all these games, you know, leading up to November 5th where you better get it right offensively.
Yep. I agree. Yeah. So, yeah, to me, it's receivers on offense, and just like you said, it's the linebackers on defense. Someone's got to step up. And, you know, again, we saw some improvement against North Carolina. How complicated the North Carolina scheme is,
Sure,
I don't know. And like I said, I'm a little concerned about some of the, you know, kind of counter type action that BYU can throw at these linebackers. And are they going to be disciplined enough to keep that backside contained, set the, you know, all those different things like that, you know? So we don't want to see one step up and two steps back. They've got to keep continuing to make progress as this season goes along. And you're going to be without JD Bertrand for a half again as well.
Absolutely. And Derek makes a great point. The weakness of Clemson is their secondary. No doubt about it.
You can throw on them.
But you've got to be able to take advantage of that. I mean, that's the big thing, right? You have to take advantage of that. And if you're just going to throw, you know, swing routes and bubbles and all of that, you're not taking advantage of that. And Wake Forest, man, they were not afraid to push the ball down the field, and they were rewarded because of it. It was either pass interference or a completed pass, right? Yeah. Guess what? We can, you know, Notre Dame can do that too. I almost used the W word. I don't know if you heard that. Notre Dame can do that too, and they need to. So you're right on, Derek.
All right. With that, are you ready for rapid fire?
It's early, but I'm ready, baby.
It is early.
I'm ready.
We're bringing it early tonight because, again, we've got a lot of stuff going on. Vince has got places he's got to go later on as well. So we're trying not to fly through this thing. We're still trying to, you know, to talk about all the stuff that we need to talk about. But like I said, we've got Jared Lloyd, BYU reporter, coming up in a little bit here as well. So first question, Vince. I'm anxious to see if you've done your homework here because Notre Dame is playing BYU in Vegas, of course, this week.
Yep.
So we can't have just one little bet. We need a big, bold wager with them going to Vegas. So what I need from you is a college football parlay for this weekend that has at least 4 legs to it.
Oh, my goodness gracious. All right.
I don't think you did your homework.
I did not do my homework. It was a busy day today at school. I did not do my homework. I'll let you go first.
Okay.
And then I will get it. Don't worry.
Okay. So here's my parlay. And I was toying with the second parlay after this, but I've already got this one out and ready. So mine starts tomorrow night. I've got Rutgers +3 at home against Nebraska.
Okay. Okay.
Are we?
Nebraska's a dumpster fire, so I like that. Yeah. I mean, and Rutgers is solid-ish, so they're better than Nebraska. And the fact that Nebraska is
they're at home,
exactly. And the fact that Nebraska is a minus on that one is shocking to me. So I like that one.
Okay, so then my second leg.
Okay,
I've got Kansas, of course, +7. They're at home against TCU Saturday. I like a lot of points in that game, but I like Kansas +7 in this game.
Okay. Oh, okay. I like that too because I think Kansas. I don't know that Kansas is going to win. I think actually, now that you mention it, in my picks, we picked this game, and I don't think those come live until tomorrow. But I picked TCU to win, but I said take Kansas in the points. Yeah. So, boom.
It's I can't pick against them at this point.
I get you.
You know, my head is telling me I probably should, but they're still undefeated, and I've been riding them pretty much every week in my picks. Even though, again, we do, you know, Brian makes us do these picks every week,
yes, he
right?
does.
And then the last thing he says is give me an upset pick.
Yeah.
And I've probably picked at least 3 of the 5 upsets. I can't remember if I got last week's not, but we don't get any credit for the upsets.
We get no credit for those. I know.
And that ticks me off.
I know.
I've called some pretty good upsets, I think, so far.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm a little upset about that myself.
Okay, so the third leg of my 5-leg parlay, I've got Arkansas plus 8.5 at Mississippi State.
Look at all the dogs, man. Look at you.
I like these. I
Yeah.
like these dogs.
Yeah, and
I've got one favorite actually.
It's funny because you're all over this, right? My upset pick was Arkansas over Mississippi State straight up.
Okay.
So that was my upset. That's my upset pick for the week. So you and I are right there, buddy. We're right there. I'm telling you.
Brian asked if they should expect to see me in the crowd, blank faced, drunk on College Game Day live. I will be in spirit. I'll be sitting here watching. I'm anxious to see where they set up for that, but I'll be here. I won't be there. I won't be blank faced.
Yeah.
Over there. Okay. So my next leg, leg 4, I've got Oklahoma plus 7.5 against Texas. I like Texas to win, but I like Oklahoma plus 7.5.
Okay.
Both teams trying to figure out who the quarterback is.
Yeah, they are. There's a lot of question marks.
That's the only thing that worries me. Yeah,
a lot of question marks in that game. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yeah, that's good. I like that.
And then my final leg, I've got Notre Dame minus 3.5 against BYU.
That's easy. I think that's a given too. I'm actually shocked that the line is as close as it is. I think that's going to be a couple score game personally. So
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
Stymie's got Tennessee minus 3. That's of course against LSU.
Yep.
Georgia minus 29.5. Who are they playing? I know it's an SEC game.
Georgia's playing Auburn.
Auburn. Yeah. I was thinking it might be.
And I don't know if this is right, but they've got Georgia as a 30-point favorite. 30.
Wow.
Against Auburn. Like, yikes.
Iowa State plus 2, and then he's got Notre Dame minus 3.5.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you can book it that I'm going to take Notre Dame minus the 3.5. That's a guarantee because I think that's easy money. I was also going to take Tennessee minus the 3. I think that's easy money as well. This is a quote unquote big game, right? And we all know how well Brian Kelly does in big games, and he's got a couple top 10 opponents here coming up.
He does.
Tougher. And it's a home game, but it's also at 11 o'clock in the morning. And so you're not going to have your Death Valley home crowd.
And that's what I like. That's why I, especially, with Tennessee going in there, I like if this would have been a night game, I might have thought, a little bit longer about LSU winning, but I like the fact that this is actually a morning game for Tennessee going in there.
Yep, I do too. And I think that Tennessee, I think they're going to blow the doors off of them, frankly. And so I will take Tennessee minus the 3 and take that all day long.
By the way, just be glad we don't have any 11 a.m. local time kickoffs. Man, could you believe that?
Oh my gosh, that would be horrible. Well, it would be bad.
I guess I had them when I was at Kansas, but nobody went to the football games back
That's
then.
fair. What I will say is it would have been bad if I was still doing the pregame show that I used to be doing because we always did it 5 hours beforehand. And that would have been a very, very early show. It was an 11 o'clock local time kickoff.
Last Kansas football game I went to, by the way, Priest Holmes
and
Ricky Williams were both still playing for Texas. It was Texas at Kansas. It was the year after I graduated, and I got season tickets because they were actually decent. And then Glenn Mason left, and they were not good for a while.
Wow. That's
it's been
a
while.
Wayback Machine, buddy boy.
It has been. All right. Do you buy or sell a Notre Dame wide receiver having a 100-yard receiving game this season?
You took me away. I was going to go with a couple more picks, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm taking Purdue plus the 3 over Maryland.
Okay.
I don't know how Purdue is an underdog in that game, but I know we're running short on time, so you don't need. You can't have me going through all of these picks, but I don't see how Purdue is an underdog. I know it's on the road, but I thought Purdue has played decently well. So far. I'm taking Auburn plus the 30. I'm taking Auburn plus the 30, Sean. I'm sorry. I know that Georgia's really good. I know Auburn's bad, but an SEC game winning by 30? I don't know.
What was the spread on that Missouri game last week? Before Missouri took them to the end.
I'm not sure. That's a good question.
I know it had to be at least a couple touchdowns.
Right. It had to have been, right? It had to have been.
Yeah,
But
because Drinkwitz is one of those guys, at Missouri who has there's been hot seat talk with him after the start they've
Sure.
had. Maybe that saves him some, even though they lost still, if he can manage some kind of season. But
yeah,
I that's not a bad pick. That Auburn.
I mean, that's
that
just
Auburn
a lot
plus
of
30.
points, man. That's just a lot of points. Now watch, Georgia's going to blow the doors off of them, but that's a lot of points to be giving up in a true SEC game. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
And then my last one, I like what Oklahoma State has been doing. I picked them to beat Baylor. Obviously, they did that. They are favored by 9.5. I'll take Oklahoma State minus the 9.5 against Texas Tech at home. So that'll be my last leg.
Yeah, that's one. Texas Tech, of course they snuck up on Oklahoma a couple of weeks ago.
They did.
That's what, trying to see how that Big 12, sometimes you just don't, it's like you can't figure them out from week to week.
Agreed.
Sometimes. I do think Oklahoma State is probably the best team in the conference, but I think this is kind of one that I'm seeing. Okay, is something going to sneak up on them? Because I think if something's going to sneak up on them, this is probably the week.
And it's funny because I was looking at the SEC lines, and Ole Miss is only favored by 17 over Vanderbilt, number one. Okay,
Yeah.
so they don't. So the biggest spread doesn't involve Vanderbilt, which I think is something to at least take note of. And then also in the Big Ten, poor Michigan State Spartans, man, they got Ohio State, and they are 27-point dogs against the Buckeyes. Whoa.
Still hard to feel sorry for Sparty. But
I get you. I see where you're coming from, but man, 27 points at home. You're at home and you're a 27-point dog. Yikes.
Yep.
So anyway.
All right. So is that it?
That's it.
You got yours out? Okay.
I'm in.
All right. So now we're on to the next question. Buy or sell a Notre Dame wide receiver having a 100-yard game this season.
I don't see that happening. No chance, no way, no how. Drew Pine is not – I don't think he's going to lock into anybody outside of maybe Michael Mayer, but I don't see him, busting a bunch of yards. He's going to be your third down guy. Maybe he gets one down the seam for 40 or something like that. I don't see him going 100. It's a hard sell for me.
I've just got to think that one guy on this team, Lorenzo Styles, has got to be good for 100-yard game.
It's possible.
At some point this season. Right? I mean, at least he inched a little bit closer against North Carolina a couple of weeks ago. So I'm gonna reluctantly buy because we're only talking about one. We're talking about 12 games. We're talking about one 100-yard game. Brian throwing a little shade on Salerno.
Ouch. Poor Matt.
Can't do it. I'm gonna buy. I have no real reason other than the law of averages says it's got to happen at some point.
Right. That's funny.
Almost got to happen anyway.
Yeah. So. Absolutely.
I'm throwing a bonus question in for you on the subject of wide receivers that you weren't ready for.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I didn't do my homework anyway.
Well,
so
that's true. That's good point.
They're all ones I'm not ready for.
Scale of 1 to 10. How confident are you we see Tobias Merriweather on the field Saturday night?
6. I'm going to go 6. I just feel like for whatever reason over the bye, people are really starting to pepper the staff about Tobias Merriweather. Okay. And I'm not saying that the media plays into the depth chart and playing guys and all of that, but I just feel like because the heat has kind of turned up recently, I think we're going to see him. I think his little package or whatever Tommy Rees was talking about, I think we see it, and I think he gets some targets too.
The heat turned up on Chris Tyree. Remember after the first 2 games, the questions started coming. How does Chris Tyree see the field? Marcus Freeman was getting the questions. Tommy Rees was getting the questions. And then all of a sudden, what's happened the last couple games? Coincidence? Was it like, were they thinking it too? Surely, again, like they've got to see this guy with this talent and this skill set that nobody else has. And I'm going to go 4. We have seen him once. what's it going to
plays or
look like?
whatever.
I guess, what's this special package that we weren't able to, get to because of game flow? What exactly does this look like? I just keep going back to the fact that I've seen somebody else say it, it's like, run a freaking go route. It's not that hard.
It's really not. That's the thing. It's really not that hard to teach a receiver to do certain things. It's just not.
Yep. I agree. Fill in the blank. A decisive win over BYU would make you feel blank for the rest of Notre Dame's season.
I mean, it would make me feel optimistic about the way things are going. I mean, I would feel, confident that they're still taking steps in the right direction. And that's what a decisive win would be. It would be another step in the right direction. I think they're a couple touchdown team better than BYU, to be honest with you. And so I guess it depends on what your definition of a decisive win is. But at the same time, I think that's what they should do if they're continuing to progress the way we think they should be progressing. If they want to have any shot against Clemson or USC down the stretch in November, that's what they need to do. They need to take care of business against BYU. And in my humble opinion, taking care of business is a decisive win. It's a couple touchdowns. That's what you should do to BYU. So it would make me feel confident and optimistic that they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, to me, it would make me feel like this team is on the right track. It's at least getting closer to the team that we thought it was going to be. You're never going to be able to erase the loss to Marshall and what happened those first couple of games.
No doubt.
But again, like decisive, I'm saying, around a couple touchdowns, basically whatever that ends up being. Because again, this is not a horrible BYU team by any means. Now, it is a BYU team that Notre Dame should have a decisive advantage against down in the trenches, where this game, I think, is going to be won
Absolutely.
and lost. And if they own those trenches, I think Notre Dame is going to do exactly what they want to do. And if they do that, that would tell me that this is a team going in the right direction, and we can start that we have reason to feel better about, because then again, you've got 3 more games then leading up to Clemson. And, like I was saying before, it's not that you're going to overlook any of these opponents, but every week leading up to Clemson is just going to be, are they getting better? Are they improving enough to make you feel like they've got a chance to beat that team in orange in November?
Yep. Agreed.
All right, so this is the 11th Shamrock Series game this weekend. Question to you, where would you like to see the Shamrock Series played next?
So I've thought about this from before because we kind of had a show about, the Shamrock Series when they debuted the jerseys and all of that stuff. And so, I've been thinking about this, and obviously this is already on the schedule, but like they've gone to a lot of places, okay? And they've gone to a lot of historic places, right? They've gone to Yankee Stadium. They've gone to Boston. They've gone to Soldier Field. I'm really excited about them going up to where the Packers play, right? Mm-hmm. I am excited about that. That is a bucket list one for me, to go up there and watch that game. Other than that, like I tried to think of like historic places that they could go. I wouldn't mind seeing them go play like in Kansas City, for example. I think that one could be kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
Other than that, like, is there any NFL stadium that I would really want to go see? Obviously, the glitz and the glamour of obviously Vegas, check that one off. I mean, that's a beautiful stadium that they get to go play in. Other than that, I mean, they've done the baseball thing. They've done the football thing. Soccer stadiums in the United States aren't that big of a deal. They go over to Ireland already. It's not technically a Shamrock Series, but they go over there already. Maybe they go to, a massive stadium in like Mexico, or something like that. Football is actually pretty big down there, right?
Yeah. And we've got that reporter from Mexico who shows up every year or two asking about playing down there, So.
No, I mean, I think that's legit though. I think that one could actually be a lot of fun if they do it right. But other than that, I mean, maybe another country or something like that. But as far as the United States go, there's not a whole lot of other stadiums that I would want to see checked off the list. I think Lambeau is probably one of the top ones, and they're going to do that. So yeah, I don't know that there's a whole lot else out there. What do you got?
I kind of Seattle is one that's always
Okay.
kind of, like they haven't played in that. I guess they've played Washington up there, at Husky Stadium and all that. But I think it's called like Lumen Field or something like that now
Yeah,
that the
yeah.
Seahawks play, and it's just like everybody, it changes quite a bit. I wouldn't mind seeing that, or like even San Francisco, where the Giants play, not
Oh,
like in the
interesting.
in another baseball park,
Sure.
because that's like the problem with a lot of these newer stadiums is there, there's not another Lambeau Field, for
Right,
example.
exactly.
Like most of them are relatively, even though they're nice, they're relatively cookie cutter. There's nothing
Absolutely.
very unique
Yep.
about the setting, so that's why I think like even like Wrigley Field would be cool, but like they've obviously had issues there with the size of the field and all that
Yeah.
different kind of stuff, and other teams have played there, so it's not as unique, I don't think, anymore. So that's what, like, San Francisco could be cool because of the setting, and you've got the the water right there beyond the outfield wall and all that kind of stuff. So I think one of those two places would be
Okay.
at least relatively unique anyway.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. You are much more well-traveled in a sports, situation than I am. I mean, I'd love to go just about anywhere and watch Notre Dame play, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think those would be fun.
Yep. All right, we've got time for one final
boy.
question tonight. So Major League Baseball's playoffs start Friday with an expanded format. It is now a 12-team field, and instead of the winner-take-all wild card game, the wild card round is a best-of-3 series, and it's also played in one park. You don't travel back and forth. It's like the team with the better record gets to host at least 2 games, if not all 3. So do you buy or sell this new baseball playoff format?
This might surprise you because I'm so anti everybody gets a medal and everybody gets a trophy nonsense, right? But I actually like the fact that they're doing a wild card series as opposed to a one game.
Yes.
Baseball is about series. I mean, because you know this as well as I do when it comes to baseball, right? Because we both coach. You're only as good as your starting pitcher. I mean, let's be honest. A team looks completely different depending on who is on the mound. And I like when you have a series, to be honest. I think that shows really who the better team is because you get an opportunity to, at the very least, see 2 pitchers, right? I would like maybe even a 5-game series, if I'm being honest, but then you're really extending out the playoffs, and I get that. But, I like the series as opposed to the one-gamer. I really do. So if that's what it takes, then so be it.
Yeah, I like it because what I've always said, they had to expand it, obviously, to get it so they could have this kind of format. But I've always said if you're going to have more than just the division winners in the playoffs, if you're going to allow second place teams and even third place teams to be in the playoffs, you need to give an advantage to the two best teams over the course of, it's cliche, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's a 162 game season. And as you expand the playoffs, it waters it down. You need to give a true advantage to the 2 best teams in each league. And by doing a 2 out of 3 series, you're guaranteeing that the team that wins that 2 out of 3 is going to have to use at least 2, if not 3 starting pitchers before they have to move on and play one of the top 2 teams in the next round. So that's why I like it.
Oh, there you go. I like that, though. I like that. It gives the advantage to the team that actually won and doesn't have to be a wild card.
That's
I get that. I like that.
By the way, I don't know if you saw this today. Buck Showalter of the Mets is toying with not pitching Jacob deGrom in their wild card series against the Padres, because they have to play the Padres, or they have to play the Dodgers rather, in the second round. So he's trying to position himself. He said he would only use deGrom if it came to an elimination situation. So if they lose game 1, or whatever, if they're forced into that. But I think that's very interesting that he's kind of more or less sending a message to the Padres that he thinks he can beat him without using his best guy to begin with.
I hate to say it, but he's probably right. And I really don't have a problem with that. That's some pretty solid strategy, frankly. I kind of like it. I kind of dig it.
Yeah.
I've always liked Buck, though. He's just a little bit out there. And
I do
too.
I've always liked him.
I'm kind of a fan, so I'm on board. I like it.
Yep. Salty with a place to play suggestion. 3 Mile Island or Alcatraz.
Wow.
One of the two. Yeah.
Yikes. Could you put a football field out there, though? Wouldn't you have to, like, tear down the buildings? Or I don't know.
Might as well just go play on Guam, you know? It's like
Yeah, right. The Rock.
That's right.
That's hilarious.
All right, Vince. Great stuff as always. You and I will be back Saturday morning. IB
Yes, sir.
countdown to kickoff as we ramp up. We'll get the early morning show, 10 o'clock Saturday morning, and of course a late night, 7:30. Yeah, not late night, but later night anyway. But
Well, it's
we'll be
late
here
enough, and
Saturday
you got
morning.
the post-game show going, so
That's right.
it's definitely a late night.
That's right. All right. Well, you get moving, and I'm going to do a little talking with Jared Lloyd here in just a second.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Sounds good. And again, we're going to continue the show now, and pre-recorded this just, for clarification with Jared Lloyd, because you'll probably notice I'm wearing a different shirt and have a different microphone in this video coming up. But Jared Lloyd, he covers BYU for the Daily Herald out in Provo. So we talked a little BYU football, getting ready for the Shamrock Series game. Notre Dame, BYU, and the Shamrock Series, of course, coming up this weekend. And Jared Lloyd is with us. He covers BYU football for the Daily Herald and HeraldExtra.com. Thanks again, Jared, for being with us today.
Oh, my pleasure. I love talking football. So this is great. I'm looking forward to this matchup. Should be a lot of fun. One that's been a long time coming.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that. And I was thinking about that. It really has been. This is one that was kind of cooking, for a long time, and we're finally getting that. And this is, it's also one, it was supposed to be a BYU home game. And, as they continue to negotiate this thing, it ends up being in Las Vegas and part of Notre Dame's Shamrock Series. And I know it seemed like maybe back in the summer, kind of leading up to this, I know maybe not all BYU fans were happy about how this turned out. How are they feeling right now heading into this game? Is there any resentment kind of lingering at all?
I think there's a little disappointment because, BYU did have Notre Dame come to Provo a couple times. And, I think there's that national cachet that Notre Dame brings, and they were looking forward to that. I mean, originally it was a 6-game slate that they signed on for, and that was going to be 4 in South Bend and 2 in Provo. And the Provo game, just with the evolution of college football, both for BYU and for Notre Dame, kind of made everything kind of not happen the way it was originally supposed to happen. And, frankly, I enjoyed my trips to South Bend, and I think BYU fans did too. There were a lot that made that trip, and got to see BYU take on the Fighting Irish in South Bend a couple of times, and kind of looking forward to that return trip. But, Tom Homo and BYU's director of athletics, I think he wants to keep a really good relationship with Notre Dame. I think that's really important to him. And so finding a way to work to make this game happen, and BYU is going to have a lot of fans down in Las Vegas. They always do. So that's not going to be a big deal. I think he's satisfied, but I do think there's some fans that would have loved to see this game be in Provo.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time, I guess, things have turned out this way when Notre Dame gets involved in a series and stuff like that. Kalani Sitake, he is now in year 7 there at BYU. What's kind of the temperature on him at this point? Is he still pretty well thought of there?
Oh, he's considering what BYU's been able to accomplish in the last 3 years. Now, there were some doubters heading into 2020 because they'd had a really, couple of mediocre seasons, and there were some people thinking, well, is he really the right guy? And as you know, the way that the college football world is, Sean, the patience with coaches it seems to be shrinking year by year. You get less and less leeway as a coach. But, the way that they played in 2020, came back with a really strong campaign in 2021, started out well here in 2022. I think there's, and the fact that he's a BYU alum, the fact that he played for the Cougars and has a tremendous passion for BYU football, that resonates with most BYU fans. And, sure, everybody wants to win the national championship every year, and that's at most institutions that have any sort of tradition. And that's not going to happen. That's just not realistic. But he's absolutely, done a great job. And And you got to give a guy credit when they've lost a total of 5 games in 2.5 years. That's a solid showing.
Absolutely. Well, and the Colorado job just came open, as you well know, and we've seen already now 5 Power 5 jobs come open just in the first 5 weeks of the season. I'm curious, when you look at Colorado, like when you look at a school like BYU that's been able to, with multiple coaches, sustain some success out there, whereas a program like Colorado really has not been able to find that footing. Why do you think BYU has maybe been able to be so much more successful than a school like Colorado that's been in a couple of different Power 5 conferences?
Well, I think BYU embraces what it is. It's a religious institution. It has some very significant demands that it puts on athletes that come to BYU. They're expected to follow, not just do well academically, but also some of the honor code things that they have, and they embrace that. They want athletes that want to come and live at that standard, and as well as playing great football. And I think because of that, BYU has been able to establish a culture and build off of that. They do a great job in recruiting. I know a lot of times BYU doesn't get highly regarded, highly touted recruits. A lot of times, they're not high on the recruiting rankings. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to those, to be honest, Sean, because to me, every athlete needs to prove themselves at the level they're playing. Sure. And all these recruiting stuff, they haven't proven anything until they do it at the next level. And so BYU's just been able to really embrace that. And because of that culture, they've gotten in a lot of talented guys, developed a lot of talented guys, been able to keep their coaching staff together. In a lot of regards, I think that's underestimated in college football, when you're able to get good coaches, keep them around so the players know what the expectations are, understand what they're trying to do, and are able to buy into that. And I think that's all been beneficial for BYU, that they've been able to use that. And we'll see how it pays off when they go to the Big 12 next year, because then it changes a little bit. You start playing the same teams year after year, and they get more and more familiar with you. So you have to be able to do things a little bit different than you do in BYU's current independent schedule.
Well, and they did. It's been about a dozen years now since BYU made that decision, and has been independent. How did it go the way they thought did it go the way they thought it was going to go, / the feeling now as they make this segue into the Big 12? What do fans think about that?
Well, I know BYU fans feel some vindication, frankly. I mean, they feel like BYU's tradition. I mean, they've got a national championship. They've got a Heisman Trophy winner. They've had a lot of top 10, top 25 teams over the years. Frankly, since the advent of the passing game under Lavelle Edwards, BYU has been in the national conversation for much of the last 50 years. And yet they never were given the same credence, probably partly because of politics. BYU as a religious institution, particularly the West Coast and the Pac-12, which was kind of the natural geographic fit, politics definitely came into play with that. And so to finally get an opportunity to rejoin TCU, join Baylor, join, some of these other schools that have some similarities with their religious approach, as well as, just some great institutions in the Big 12. I think BYU fans do feel, hey, it was our time a long time ago. Now we actually get to do it. I think Independence was about as good as they could have asked. I mean, they played a lot of big games in a lot of great places, had a lot opportunity for their fans to really show up and support the team across the country. And, I've been to games in all corners of the country and seen BYU fans sometimes even outnumbering the home fans at some of these games, just because they've got a national following. And Notre Dame understands that, because they're able to do that as well, because they've got such a national brand. But it really helped BYU build that brand and set them up. And particularly the last couple of years, the success also put them in a position where they were a natural fit for a conference looking to expand.
I noticed for the big names, that BYU has on its schedule this year, there's no Utah on the schedule this year. Is there any is the future of that rivalry in doubt at all, especially with BYU making the move to the Big 12? What's going on there?
Yeah, I think it has to be, Sean. I think that they have to look at it. You look at these 9-game conference schedules. You look at adding you add a non-FBS opponent a lot of times to that schedule. That's 10 games right there in both conferences. And the fact that they don't play each other in conference means that BYU and Utah only have a couple of games on their regular season schedule that are even possibilities anymore. And, when BYU was independent, they could work around it a little bit more, and Utah was willing to work with that, depending on what Utah's schedule was. But I don't think it's going to be as consistent, which is sad. I think teams like Florida and Florida State have been able to make it happen year after year, but it has helped, having not as many conference games. And I just don't know how, BYU and Utah are going to work it out being currently in different conferences. Now, is conference realignment done? Could they eventually end up in the same conference somewhere? Sure. Who knows how that's going to play out. But at this point, I don't think we'll see it every year. I'd like to see it as often as possible because it's such a fun game here in Utah. That rivalry battle is just, it's something that football fans look forward to every single season. And the years that it hasn't happened, it just doesn't have the same buzz between, across the entire state.
Yep. They had a little different kind of rivalry game, I guess, last week against Utah State, and they improved to 4-1 after winning that game. And they kind of had to turn it on in the second half to end up winning that game by 12 points. Were you surprised at all at how competitive that game ended up being?
I was a little bit surprised, but I knew Utah State was going to come in and give everything they had. I mean, they feel like, BYU and Utah often don't respect them. The Aggies feel that they're not as respected as BYU and Utah. And so they come in with that chip on their shoulder, and they really changed around what they were going to do. They brought in a new quarterback and really changed their approach, and it worked really well for a half. But BYU was able to wear them down. And in the end, the W is what matters, and that's what BYU got. Right. Was it the most impressive performance against a Utah State team that struggled quite a bit? No. And I think BYU looks at it and says, hey, we need to play a lot better football if we're going to have a shot in the next couple of weeks against Notre Dame and Arkansas. But, at the end of the day, they got the win. They were able to stay relatively healthy, which was big, and they had the extra couple of days. I know Notre Dame's coming off a bye week, but they did have the extra couple of days because it was a Thursday game, and
true.
those extra couple of days do make a difference. So they're able to have a little bit more time to get prepared for this game against Notre Dame.
Got a pretty experienced quarterback in Jaren Hall, 33 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions combined in the last couple of years. Is it fair to say that they pretty much go as he goes?
He's their best player that, as far as skill positions, he's the guy that makes that offense go. And, he is so much fun to watch. I've actually watched him since high school. He's a local kid here in the area and watched him grow up. He's a legacy kid as well. His dad, Jaren Hall, played at BYU back in the 1990s when I believe there's also games against Notre Dame back in those days. But, he comes in and plays with such level-headed. He's such a level-headed kid. He doesn't get too high. If there's a mistake or problems, he doesn't get too low, and he doesn't throw a lot of bad balls. Now, there's a couple of passes. Every quarterback has a couple of passes that maybe either could have been intercepted or should have been intercepted that weren't. But for the most part, he puts the ball where his receivers can get it, and it's really hard for defenders to get to it. He makes good decisions. He's a veteran. And he takes care of the ball really well. And that's kind of what BYU wants him to do. He's not necessarily asked to go out there and throw 50 times a game and, just light it up like BYU quarterbacks of the 80s and 90s, but manage the game. Don't make turnovers, make smart calls, make good reads. And he throws a really nice ball. He's really shown that he can put the ball in a lot of different windows, the back shoulder fade.
Yeah.
He can throw it deep. He can do a lot of things. And he really is, Sean. I really believe that BYU plays and wins when he plays well and gives them that chance. And, that really, the offense really depends on how he's doing.
Well, he seems to distribute the ball well, but the receiver who stands out is Keanu Hill, who's the guy, 20 yards per catch plus compared to the other guys, a little bit more bunched up in their yards per catch totals, I guess. What maybe kind of sets Hill apart, do you think?
Well, Hill does a really good job getting the ball down, getting downfield and making a play on the ball and on the deep ball. That's why his yards per catch are so high. He gets a lot of attention down the field, and he's really had to step in and play a bigger role since BYU's top 2 receivers have been injured, not at 100%. I don't know if either of them will be at 100% this week, but he's stepped into that and been that big play guy. They've gotten some other, some nice plays from some other possession guys that have really allowed Hall to move the ball around. And he's not trying to spot, he's not trying to lock in on one guy. He's really good at trying to see what the defense is going to give him and then get the ball to the right guy and make the most out of it. And maybe that's a 5-yard route, maybe that's a 20-yard route, maybe it's a 50-yard route, and he really does try to read that and does a good job with it. And so Hill's been able to benefit on a lot of those deep passes, and he does a good job down the field.
I saw you gave their offensive line a C grade for last week's game. Is that kind of pretty much their biggest offensive question, do you think, is just the play of that line?
Well, it's, the expectation that BYU had, because they brought back 7-8 guys with experience, talent. There was a high expectation that this offensive line could potentially be one of the best BYU's had. Some of these guys are getting, national award attention, even draft attention, and yet they haven't really seemed to be quite as good as I think as they expected to be honest. I think they expected to be better than they were. I mean, in the first half against Utah State, BYU had negative 21 yards rushing, and part of that was a fumble, a ball that got knocked backwards. But most of it, they just weren't running the ball very well, and so there is a little bit that unit needs to elevate its game. And C was, they were definitely average in my opinion. I feel like they have the capability to be a lot better than that. They're big, they're physical, they're experienced. I don't know if they're as fleet of foot or, as agile for some of the run schemes that BYU is running. And so defenders have been able to beat them to spots at times. But yeah, that line, that group, it really, I mean, it's been great in pass blocking overall. It really has done well there. But the run block, there's definitely some area, quite a bit that they can improve in that aspect of the game.
Well, on the other side of the ball, they ranked 93rd in the nation against the run, and Oregon was really able to exploit that with over 200 yards. Utah State ran it really well in the first half against them last week. How big a concern do you see that in this matchup specifically against Notre Dame?
I think it's huge. And I think Notre Dame's proven that it can move the ball on the ground and then, take advantage of what that opens up. And I think BYU is fully aware of that. And, they really do have some questions to answer there. How much of it is scheme? How much of it is execution? And how much can they clean up in both areas? Because, a lot of what they tried to do against Oregon, against Utah State, and to a lesser extent against Wyoming was to try and take away some of the short passes and some of the things that they expected. And then those teams came out and ran the ball a lot more than they anticipated. And the scheme and the execution both weren't great. There were a lot of mistakes. And so Notre Dame, I'll be very surprised if Notre Dame doesn't come out and say, hey, we're going to try and test you the exact same way. And they've got the line and the running backs and the ability to do that. The question is can BYU avoid the mistakes, the missed tackles, the assignment breakdowns that allowed those teams to be really successful? I think that's a pretty significant step from what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. So I do expect Notre Dame to have some success on the ground, but BYU's got to limit that and not let Notre Dame control the game with its run game.
All right. So when you look at this matchup, Notre Dame, BYU wins if what happens Saturday night?
Well, I think we've just been talking about it. I think it comes down, I think BYU wins if it's able to win the battle in the trenches. I think that if Notre Dame controls both the offensive and defensive lines, then I think Notre Dame wins because Notre Dame's going to run the ball. It's going to be able to control the clock and do what it wants. And, then you open up the play action pass and, getting the ball out to the wide receivers, tight end, obviously a fantastic tight end.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of options there as far as what they're able to do if they're able to control that line of scrimmage. And the same thing's on the other side of the ball. If BYU's not able to run, if they're one-dimensional, Jaren Hall's really good, but that really that allows the Irish, linebackers, blitzers, defensive linemen to just pin their ears back and go after him. So BYU's got to be strong at the point of attack. And, this is basic football 101, right, Sean? Win in the trenches and you win the game.
That's it.
But BYU's big enough and physical enough to be able to match Notre Dame. But I really feel like the team that's able to get the edge in that area is going to be the team that comes out on top.
Yep. I think that's kind of what it all boils down to as well. Great stuff from Jared Lloyd covering BYU football for the Daily Herald and heraldextra.com. You can see all his BYU stuff there at heraldextra.com. Enjoyed it, Jared. Great stuff from you. Appreciate it. Thanks. Enjoy the game Saturday night.
Thanks, Sean. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a really fun contest, and we'll see we'll learn a lot about both teams from this game.
I think so too. Take care. All right. So there we go. Jared Lloyd, I don't think he's thinking too far off from what we're thinking, Vince.
No, I agree with you completely. I think he is he's right there, no doubt about it. And I think he's right. And I think his last sentence, I think, is accurate. We're going to learn a lot about both of these teams on Saturday.
Yeah, I think so too. And like you said, just looking at BYU, they look like they should be physical, but again, it's not like I've watched every game like we've watched every Notre Dame game, but just watching what really is an undersized Utah State type team be able to move them around at the point of contact down at the line of scrimmage. That's if Notre Dame plays their game, that's a big advantage for the Irish Saturday night.
Yep, no doubt about it. It's going to be fun. I'm excited about it. Should be a fun one.
I don't know if Vigo is serious here or
so, you never know.
All right. Hey, well, thanks guys. Appreciate you stopping by tonight. And again, of course, IB Countdown to Kickoff is Saturday morning at 10 o'clock Eastern time. And so Vince and I will be here with that as we get all the nuts and bolts and get ready for Notre Dame and BYU Saturday night. I'll talk to you then.